Welcome everybody to a great evening of design, discussion on Calgary's new Central Library. On the screen you will see a quick agenda for the evening. We are excited to have all of you here tonight to be the first to see the design of the new library. Tonight is an open house for you to hear about the design of the new library. This event will inform the development permit application, which CMLC is preparing to submit at the end of this month. Over the past 2 years, more than 16,000 Calgarians were engaged to discuss their desires and objectives for a new central library. This evening, we will hear from a few members of the project team, including representatives from the City of Calgary, the Central Public Library, the Calgary Municipal Land Corporation, and the architectural design team as they address how the design and features of the building meet your needs.
It's wonderful to see so many of you here to view and discuss the design for our new Central Library. The new library design is a culmination of what we've heard from Calgarians. Over the past 2 years, more than 16,000 citizens told us what matters most for a 21st century library, and your thoughts and hopes are reflected in its design and in its function. Libraries throughout the world have and will continue to foster our innate desire to learn, to understand, and to influence how we live as a community. Calgary's new Central Library, the heart and the hub of Calgary's growing library system, is intended to be its flagship and to set the tone and the standard for community libraries in every part of our city. When I first saw the architectural design, 2 words came to mind: dazzling and dynamic. And I thought this makes it the perfect metaphor for our city, our people, and the resurging neighborhood of East Village. The East Village plan envisions arts and culture as the heartbeat of the neighborhood. As East Village takes shape, it helps grow the city's cultural corridor. At the very center of this corridor, perfectly positioned between the Glenbow Museum, Fort Calgary, the Epcor Centre, and the new National Music Centre, is the new Central Library. Investing in culture makes Calgary stronger socially, provides far-reaching economic benefit, and helps grow our stature. The Economist currently ranks Calgary as the 5th most livable city in the world. Council's commitment of $175 million towards this iconic project keeps us on this trajectory.
In 2012 and 2014, we sought public input into the design and functionality of the new Central Library. They asked, in a word, for more. More spaces, more community and digital connections, more programs, more for teens, more for kids and families, more languages, more accessibility, more innovation. If anyone has wondered whether the concept of the library is becoming obsolete in our modern and high-tech world, the answer we got from Calgarians was a resounding and emphatic no. The journey to create the new Central Library has required a significant investment in time, financial resources, and reflection on civic values that began in 2004 and will continue until opening day in 2018. The Calgary Public Library owes a huge debt of gratitude to the City of Calgary and to the Calgary Municipal Land Corporation. They joined the library board in recognizing the need for a new central library and are supporting the project fully. All great cities have at their heart a great library. Our library's foundation has a bold and audacious vision to create the best public library in the world, not just in Canada, not in North America, but in the world, as an investment in the potential of all Calgarians and the future of our city. Add in the Campaign for Calgary's Library will be our opportunity to create an enduring legacy for our families, children, and all who enter a library's door and leave richer than they were before. With a private sector goal of $75 million, the Add In campaign will benefit all community libraries, and there's no greater investment Calgarians can make than investing in our own future. Only the library can meet an entire city's thirst for knowledge and community connections.
In 2007, Calgary City Council created the Calgary Municipal Land Corporation. They let us loose with a clear and ambitious mandate to implement and execute the Rivers Community Revitalization Plan, a public infrastructure program approved by the City of Calgary and the Province of Alberta to kickstart Calgary's urban renewal, create sustainable development and inside the core, and inject energy into the community. A master plan developer of East Village, CMLC is devoted to making East Village an inner-city neighborhood for all. A gathering place where residents and visitors will find stimulation, inspiration, entertainment, and recreation to an environment that combines the pleasures of city life and extraordinary access to riverfront and nature. In 2013, CMLC was appointed the developer of New Central Library in East Village, entrusted to manage, coordinate, and supervise design and construction on what will be a landmark building for our city and its people. CMLC considers the NCL as one of the most important enduring civic gestures our city can make. In our role as developer, we assume financial responsibility for the project, and we have leveraged our community revitalization levy to supplement the City of Calgary's contribution with an additional $70 million towards the project cost of $245 million. Our commitment of $70 million is, in fact, the redevelopment East Village is achievable to the unique financial model called the Community Revitalization Levy, or CRL. The CRL is a mechanism by which property taxes result from the new development are captured in the fund, and CMLC can use the fund for 20 years to put in place critical infrastructure. Without a community revitalization levy, the EV redevelopment would not be possible, and we would not see what we see today. It required a partnership between the City of Calgary and the province of Alberta to make this plan real and a visionary master plan. But the CRL only works when third-party developers are attracted to invest in our project, and our efforts to attract our partners are working. So far, we've attracted almost $2 billion of planned investment, which means the CRL fund is growing. CMLC experience, passionate placemaking brings new energy to bold neighborhoods, creates credibility and confidence, inspires communities to build, grows, and believe. We are staunch believers in the importance of a new central library as our community's most accessible and democratic institution. And we are proud to help bring to life the landmark of a lifelong learning and discovery for all.
I feel very privileged to be here tonight. I'm going to set up the design presentation with a bit of an introduction to the project, what we've done to date, who we've done it with, and then I'm going to turn the microphone and the controls over to Craig, who's going to lead us through the design of this building, because that's what we're all here for. The building you're about to see is designed based on inputs from 16 to 20,000 additional user groups, which is all of you and others in the community. And from that public consultation process, there's some key themes that were brought forward, and I'm not going to repeat them, you'll see them in the design, but the words that are on the screen right now amplify what you, the citizens of Calgary, asked to be delivered. And finally, I'm going to show you the actual project site, and this is a photograph taken of the job site this morning, and you can see some important aspects of that. And just to reinforce where this building's located in the city, it's directly east of the municipal building, just east of 3rd Street Southeast, and it spans from 9th Avenue Southeast to 7th Avenue Southeast. And most importantly, what you see in this picture is the LRT tracks bisecting the site. And Craig's going to talk a lot about those and how they become an opportunity as well as a constraint to our site. But what I wanted to make sure people in Calgary were aware of is that this is an important aspect of the design, and we're currently under construction. You can see a piling rig in the top corner. You can see construction activity on the job site. And what we're doing right now is called encapsulating the tunnel, or encapsulating the LRT, where we're building a tunnel around it so that we can provide seamless service of LRT and public transit to Calgary throughout the construction. And in essence, we're creating a building on top of a railway system. And so we're going to switch to a little video that shows you really what encapsulating a train looks like. And you'll see a train coming through there.
High-speed train.
Yes, very fast train. You can see us building the foundations on the sides of that train tunnel, and you'll see the columns and the structural supports coming into play here that allows us to build a safe, covered-over train system on which we're going to build an amazing 240,000 square foot iconic piece of architecture that all of us in the room here as Calgarians and citizens of Calgary will one day be very proud of. We will visit, we will use it for more than getting books. It will become part of the Calgary urban landscape that our friends and relatives and out-of-town guests will come to visit. It will truly be a remarkable piece of the Calgary landscape. So thank you, and I'll pass along to Craig.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate it. Thank you. One of the things that we often say to ourselves as we're working on this project is we're not just going to build a great library or the best library in the world or the best library that you can sort of find in a book somewhere. We want to build the right library for Calgary, the library that works best for this particular place. Each city, each community is different. Each place in the world, each geography that you visit has a different set of needs and cultures. And so we're always asking ourselves, in this particular moment in time, with the budgets that we have to work with the city conditions that surround us, with the different needs of all of you in the community, are we going to make the right library? Forget about all the greats and the biggest and the best. It's got to be the right library. And we're always telling ourselves that as we work through the project and we work through the plans. The site itself, you might think, is rather straightforward. If you were to draw a little square around what is the property line of the site, you'd say, well, that's kind of straightforward. There's a place for the library and some commercial areas up above that near 7th. Should be pretty easy to make a building there. But in fact, as you've seen now, it is actually bisected by two rather significant corridors. The light rail transit line, the LRT, moves in a north-south direction in a curving line that is not parallel to the ground because there's a tunnel in which the light rail line dives into. In addition, there's a pedestrian corridor that is created from the west to the East Village called the 8th Avenue Corridor, which will become more and more used as the East Village grows around the site. So we wanted to keep that open so that people could move freely from the cultural districts of downtown Calgary as they grow and blossom in future years, and as the people want to connect back and forth between the East Village and the downtown district. So you can see now suddenly what was essentially a square site is now cut in all kinds of small pieces, and right in the middle of it is where you want to have the heart of the library. How do you make a building here? But actually we decided, even though this seems like a kind of an odd challenge or a problem, it also represents an opportunity. We call these problematunities. They're sort of problems that have an opportunistic quality about them. So what we looked at was that actually if you form the building around this curving form of the LRT line and allow the building to raise up so that the pedestrian 8th Avenue corridor can flow freely, then actually you have a really interesting building. And in fact, if those things weren't there, it might just be a kind of square sort of thing that you might find anywhere else. So it's exactly these challenges that have made this sort of process very, very interesting for us. Still, you've got to get the thing to work. The LRT goes right through everything, and that's right where we want to have the heart of the library. So we began to talk about different ways of bringing this heart to the center of the building. I thought we all thought when we were going to make this presentation, it'd be nice to show you some of the early sketches that we've done, not just the way it is today, but where we started. And this was one of the first sketches in the process. And you can see we created a very large atrium space in the center of the building where you could stand and look up and see the sky. But it meant that we would have to divide the library into two parts so that people could move freely through it. And this would not be a functionally very decent way to make a library. At least the librarians wouldn't be very happy having to walk inside and outside all the time to get back and forth to the different parts of the library. So we recognized that we had to go into a different route. And suddenly we saw that if we lifted the building up and we created the library almost as a bridge over the corridor, we would have this wonderful landscape that we could free up from the footprint of a building, and we could create a series of soft terraces and ramps that would lead you up over the light rail tunnel and back down the other side so that you could move from the municipal building to the East Village. On one side of you would be the entry to the library, and there'd be a wonderful public forum with an auditorium and community use space, entrepreneurial space, directly on the street, on 3rd Street. And on the other side, you would have different facilities related to the administration and the operations of the building, and these would lead you through to the reading rooms of the building itself. And then we recognized, of course, that it must be necessary to create more than just a building. We're not just talking about a library inside. It's also outside the library that is very representative and very important to the people of the community. So we thought maybe we could create a garden or a park-like atmosphere, a kind of library plaza, almost like the old library that you have here in the center of the city that's sitting in its own grounds. This is very difficult to do in a traditional situation in an urban environment where there are just kind of roads defining the perimeters of your site. But we made a lot of sketches. We showed you could soften 3rd Street, potentially make it more pedestrian friendly, create these beautiful curves where the building would lift itself off the ground and allow the passage to move freely and the LRT line to move freely under the construction. And that was sort of a very, very early sketch that we had. We moved from there to some more detailed sketches, and you can see now here in this very early sketch that there's a sort of a series of ramps and terraces, and they're curved. They're curved precisely because they're mimicking the curvature of the LRT line, which is underground, under your feet. And those lead you towards the door, lead you towards the entry, and creates this very unusual form, a very beautiful sort of organic form, not the typical form you might see in an office building or a commercial building. And that was exciting to us. But we had to ask ourselves, eventually, what is a library? This is the 21st century. People like to say all the time, why do we need libraries? I've got my iPad. And of course, we all know everything on the internet is absolutely true, so we don't really need books. And this is a kind of an interesting question at one level. But of course, we all know that it is now, in this age, as technology grows around us, we become ever more concerned with making connections to people and finding places where we can reconnect to those around us. So the library isn't really about books. It never was. It's not really about computers. It never will be. Computers one day will be gone also, and we'll have some other kind of technology that we interact with. Libraries have always been about people, and this library has to definitely be about people because it's a burgeoning community, a burgeoning city on the cusp of a new life. And so we found that very interesting too. And I can tell you for a fact, we're seeing more libraries built now than probably we've seen in the last 20 to 25 years. The need is growing greater and greater. And that's because these buildings are not just resources. They're places where people want to be. They just want to be there. They want to meet other people. They want to hear different points of view. This can't always be done on a cold sidewalk in the winter in Calgary or up in the, say, garden of a shopping center. Sometimes it has to be done in a place that is tailored for that kind of environment. So that pushed us a little further to create a very dynamic program that was based on the community input that's been talked about earlier. As you move through the building, there's a wonderfully wide entry that can be used for community events. There's leading from that entry a series of very soft terraces, as you can see, just over the light rail transit line that will have reading areas of contemporary issues just immediately by the door. As you move up the building, there's a dark blue area in this drawing with a children's library for different ages from 0 up to 10 and 12 years old, and then of course teen services and young adult services higher up in the building. Different reading collections, and as you move higher and higher in the building, you get a greater view of the city around you, and it'll be a little more introspective, a little quieter. There's a full range of reading areas and use areas in this building. Some of them are going to be loud and crazy, and some of them are going to be very quiet, a place where you can relax and come to terms with your own thoughts. So all of these places need to exist in the 21st century library. The building is stacked in a way because it has to go up several floors, and because of the fact that you have to go up in the building, it's not on one floor, we've tried to create a system where once you enter the building, you know immediately where you are and where you want to go. Well, traditionally, libraries have been very hard to figure out where to go. I'm sure some of you have had situations where you've gone into a big, complicated library and you say, you know, where can I find the fiction section? And they tell you to get in an elevator, go to the 3rd floor, find the toilets, take a left on the corridor, and then ask somebody where the fiction section is, and eventually you'll make it. This library won't be like that. You'll be able to sort of create your own mental map based on this atrium that brings natural light deep, deep down into the library building itself. And as you move through that atrium, there'll be a series of stairs and terraces and ramps that allow you to kind of spin around in the building and discover new things that you might not have seen if you just took the elevator from the first floor to the fiction section. So you can always interact with the collections in new ways. So here's the first image of the actual design. We'll start with the interior. Here you can see the main atrium space lifting up to over four floors high to a naturally skylit sort of culmination that allows you to understand not only the floor that you're on, but all the different levels in between and the different types of reading areas. You'll notice that there's a great deal. Oh, you're not allowed to do that, I don't think. Oh, but you can take a picture of my derriere. That's a... Anyway, you'll see there's a lot of natural wood here, and we're creating a lot of materials that are sensuous, materials that you can touch, that feel good to the skin, a lot of light colors so that it will feel bright and airy at different times of the year. As you move up the atrium space and you look across to the collections themselves, you'll see different types of seating environments. Some of the seats will be hard, some of them will be soft, some of them will be colored, some of them will be natural colors. You'll see different types of ways of sitting. Here you can see we've incorporated a small amphitheater, a fixed seating, just next to the stair. And you'll notice that each of the stairs that go all the way up the building are actually very short run stairs. And they're right in your center of view, so people will almost be invited to take these little stairs up the building. And before they know it, they've taken the stairs to the 4th floor. That's something they wouldn't ordinarily do in a building. And they would have maybe, hopefully, enjoyed that experience. And so that's a big characteristic of the library, to get people to move. I did want to say one more thing about libraries that I think is fascinating. Libraries, of course, in the West have been around for thousands of years. Originally, libraries didn't have books in them at all. This is a picture of what is called a stoa, which existed in ancient Greece. In the stoas, people came together and they simply talked to one another. These were places where intellectuals were challenging each other to think of new ideas. And they would move back and forth along the stoa space and discuss and describe their thoughts. And in that way, we wanted to recreate this idea because libraries are, in fact, returning to this model that existed 2,000 years ago. Today, libraries are places where people come and they interact with each other, just like they did 2,000 years ago in ancient Greece. So you'll find in the new design some characteristics of that, the way the structure appears, the way there's a rhythm to the structure, the way there's light on one side and less light on the other side in different parts of the building. So you're always gauging your movement through the building. Again, the use of wood and natural colors helps guide you through the spaces. There'll be some spaces that are single height and some that are double height, so you'll have tremendous and commanding sort of volumes that give you views, in this case out over the East Village on the top floor of the building. And of course, you'll find all the time, as you're in the building, you're experiencing the exterior as well as the interior. Well, what is outside? It's Calgary. And that is a very important question. What is Calgary? Some of you can answer it. Rob can probably answer it because he grew up here. But people like myself who are guests or visitors really have to try to understand it. And perhaps it's the outside perspective, maybe, that gives us a different way of understanding what Calgary is. But I've been here many times, and our design team have been here many times, and we always learn that Calgary is a unique destination, a unique home between the prairie and the mountain. There are different characteristics of the weather that you get here that you don't find anywhere else. There are different geographies that you find here that are quite unique. There are places where the mountains turn into these soft rolling foothills, often covered with wind-blown brown grass as you move closer and closer towards the city. These are nice experiences. And of course, as intimidating as the winter can be, I don't think it's that bad. I lived in Norway for 20 years. You know, it's cold, okay. But it's also beautiful. Winter is beautiful. And you find at times when the wind blows the snow across the prairie or across the sidewalk, you get these amazing forms, these sculptural forms. We wanted to work with those ideas. We also learned as non-Calgarians about the amazing Chinook Arch, which I have yet to see, but I'm hoping to see one day. It's a unique weather phenomena that occurs here, and it really is a wonderful, sort of beautiful act of nature. And we wanted to bring that into the design. Here you can see a very early wooden model that we made in the studio. We were actually making this model with our hands, believe it or not. People still use their hands in architecture. And we made this and we started to realize how it somehow represented this wonderful moment. And so the building kind of leaps like the Chinook Arch over the landscape. We also were fascinated by the works of the First Nations people, the indigenous peoples that live here all the way from the west coast of the country, all the way across the prairies and towards the east. There are wonderful characteristics that we're still learning about. Obviously, we have a long way to go, but we began to feel the presence of this type of art in some of the characteristics of the design. And finally, we were interested in an interesting story or an abstraction of a story. And what is a library if it's not about a collection of people finding all of their self a kind of home in the city? So this little sketch or little drawing, little graphic shows a bunch of homes, all sort of interlocked homes. And it's a nice way of understanding the community. So if you look on the facade, it's not your typical square window. It's almost like you're seeing all these homes sort of pieced together. It's not real obvious, but it's kind of there. And we thought that was rather interesting. So the final views you'll see here are looking here from the East Village back towards the west. There's an outdoor passage where you can move through without necessarily going into the library. You don't have to walk into the library if you don't want to. You can walk past the door, move back and forth in the city, and you rise up into the library spaces above. And these arched bay windows allow you to see into the building as well as see out. And here's a slightly closer view of the main entrance to the building up above the light rail transit line. And I should mention that all of these terraces are barrier-free. The entire building is designed to be equitable for all types of people with all types of ways of moving. And we have a great system of flow through the building in that regard. This is looking along 3rd Street to the side that faces the municipal building, which would be on the left. The same passage that you just saw, except from the other direction. The planted landscapes around the building to soften the landscape as you move into the library itself. This is a more detailed view. You'll see we're actually cladding the underside of the Chinook Arch in a natural wood-like quality material that will allow us to, again, feel the sensitivity of nature in the heart of Calgary. And finally, a view of the public forum, which is an auditorium that can be used for events for the city, for the library, by entrepreneurs or by collective groups that is interlocked with the library itself. So a very dynamic kind of place to enjoy in addition to enjoying the services of the library. I'm going to conclude very quickly with something that I found rather fascinating as we began this project. I saw this image of an old clay sort of oil lamp. This is thousands of years old, this oil lamp, and it was this tiny little dim light that somehow caught our attention. And what is fascinating about this is the little lamp that people used to use to read by thousands of years ago in that library that you saw, for example, in ancient Greece. And it's hard to imagine the great works of philosophy, of math, of science, the great thinking that went into the creation of the classical world that we find much of our heritage based upon came by the light of that tiny little lamp. Not from the big lights of the ceiling lights or from the iPads or the technology. They just came from this little light. And so we thought somehow that the building could represent this. So at times the building feels like this old oil lamp, hearkening to the past, but certainly a part of the future. And as you approach the building from 7th, where many of the pedestrians will walk also from the heart of the city, as you walk along the street, you'll see the building pulling forward, beckoning people towards it. At night, it will glow in a very unique way, much like the oil lamp that we saw in the previous picture, and allow people to see themselves in a different way, to find a different memory of their city that yet doesn't exist today. Thank you very much for your time.